Hi, everybody. In this video, we're going to start talking about sampling. When we think about sampling, there's a few things that I would like for you to know. First, in this video, we're going to go over some basic terminology. In the next video, we're going to go over some various methods that you can use to select your sample. Then I have two more videos, one on attribute sampling and one on variable sampling. And ultimately, when you look at your results, I want you to know what those results mean. So those are the key takeaways we should have from this module. So just some basic terminology. We are talking about taking a sample from a population. Well, what do those terms mean? So a population is a study of a large group of items. It could be people in a research project. In auditing, it could be invoices, it could be sales transactions. What is it that we are trying to look at? So we're going to take a sample or a smaller group of items and measure those, analyze those, and then from that sample, we will make some conclusions about the population as a whole. That's called sampling. So sampling is taking a sample or a subset of the population, looking it over, and then ultimately drawing some conclusions about that population. So that's really what we're talking about here. We do this all the time in auditing. We are never going to be able to look at 100% of all the transactions and all the documents that a business had during the year in, the couple of weeks that we are working on a particular audit. So what we're really talking about here is taking a few items so that we can have an opinion about the fairness of their financial statements based on what we're seeing in those various samples. So with sampling comes some risk. So we have two types of risk that I want to go over: sampling risk and non-sampling risk. So sampling risk is the risk that the items that we select aren't a good representation of the population as a whole. So when we are thinking about sampling, if we take 20 invoices and they all look good, and we make the conclusion that all of the invoices are good based on these few that we looked at, but in reality, we chose all the good ones, but there were a lot of bad apples that we didn't choose. That would be an idea behind sampling risk. So the sample is non-representative of the population. Non-sampling risk is also coming to the wrong conclusion. So we have made the wrong conclusion, but it isn't because we had a non-representative sample. It's because we made some mistake in how we looked at that sample. So maybe the conclusion that we reached was that sales were okay based on looking at purchase documents. Obviously, those are two completely separate things. We're talking about cash outflow with purchases and sales, cash inflow on the other hand. So we couldn't draw that conclusion. That's this idea behind sampling risk. We make some sort of error in analyzing the sample that leads us to the wrong conclusion. So we have two different types of techniques that we can utilize. So the first is random or statistical sampling, and the second is non-random, or also called non-statistical sampling. So both of these methods are allowable under generally accepted auditing standards. I should say GAS, not GAAP. So GAS allows us to use both of these, and we do use both of them more often than you might think. However, only the random or statistical sampling will allow us to control for that exposure to sampling risk. So the idea that we want to have a sample that's representative of a population, the only way we can control for that is to use random or statistical sampling. So in random or statistical sampling, what we are stating is that every item in that population has an equal chance of being selected, that it is completely random. So if you think about like a bingo drawing where you have the big roller and you're turning the crank, and every ball in that wheel has an equal chance of coming out. That's the same idea between random or statistical sampling. Every item has an equal chance of being selected. In non-random or non-statistical sampling, this is where the auditor might use some other method to choose their item. So, for example, maybe they want to choose any item over their materiality threshold because those items are going to have the highest level of risk. That would be a non-random sample because they aren't choosing items at random, they're choosing them based on that characteristic within the item. So that is non-random sampling. All right, we are going to end this video here. Come back and I'll go over some methods that are representative of our random sampling and our non-random sampling. Have a great day.